During that initial wave of VR excitement, circa 2016, it seemed like every AAA video game franchise got a spin-off. Batman Arkham VR, The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim VR, and even the original Resident Evil 4 all made the jump with varying degrees of success. That's why it's a little strange to play an Assassin's Creed VR title now, at the tail end of 2023, when the future of the platform is far more fraught, and Ubisoft is teasing something revolutionary for future mainline installments. Nevertheless, not only is Assassin's Creed Nexus VR here, but it's actually quite good, firmly immersing you into the role of an assassin like never before across 3 distinct time periods, despite the usual VR jank. Holding it all together, and the main reason why you'll be jumping between missions as characters Cassandra, Connor Kenway, and fan favourite Ezio, is due to the present day storyline, something totally absent in this year's Assassin's Creed Mirage, yet returns here in full force. You play as an unnamed hacker, you see, charged by the assassins to go deep undercover within the Abstergo mainframe. The hope from Abstergo's side is that you'll track down the fragments needed to piece together the titular Nexus device, when in reality, your primary mission is sabotage. It's no secret that the present day Assassin's Creed storyline hasn't been popular amongst the entire fanbase since Desmond Miles' arc ended in Assassin's Creed 3. However, here it's harmless enough and is arguably put to the best use it ever has due to how neatly the entire Animus concept lends itself to VR. There is a downside to this framing device though, in that you're constantly pulled in and out, forced to stare at NPCs who spout endless dialogue in between long load screens. The move to a more segmented, chapter-based style of Assassin's Creed was actually a lot more jarring than I initially expected. After all, almost every Assassin's Creed up until now has gifted you with a beautiful, contiguous, open world location to explore, though that's not really the case here. Rather, you'll plough through this 12 to 15 hour campaign, which consists of some open-ish areas, completing largely linear objectives at your own pace. Fortunately, although rendered at a much lower graphical quality than when we last saw them before, exploring ancient Greece, colonial America, and Renaissance era Italy from first person is a true sight to behold. There's no getting around the fact that, by including these 3 periods as opposed to just one, Ubisoft has been incredibly generous. This is a VR adventure that sees you scale walls and rooftops that have a lot of locational variety to them. And sure, there might be a lot of loads required to take you both in and then outdoors, or when you swap between timelines, but it's mostly made up for by those long stretches within certain chapters where you are afforded a little freedom. From synchronizing viewpoints, of course, performing the leap of faith, combat and running challenges, to optional puzzles, each biome has a good degree of interactivity to it. In terms of how Assassin's Creed Nexus VR actually plays, I covered a lot of this in my initial preview, and I remain impressed by how well Ubisoft has managed to translate key cornerstones of the Assassin's Creed concept to VR. Parkouring, for instance, is done by simply looking where you want to go and holding down the A button on your MetaQuest controller, while climbing by clambering across different grip points feels exactly as it should. Similarly, holding down the trigger button and flicking my wrist to reveal the iconic hidden blade never stopped being badass. Everything works and operates as you expect it would. Unfortunately, this power fantasy doesn't exactly translate well whenever I was forced into open combat. Now, Assassin's Creed Nexus VR does its best to add depth with the addition of slow enemies that are prone to dishing out unblockable heavy attacks, fast enemies primed to rush you, as well as shielded enemies that can be tough to get behind. That said, I lost count how many times one-on-one combat encounters descended into a bout of endless slashing. I'd be less inclined to wave my sword around like a doofus if it didn't work, but the problem is that 9 times out of 10, I was able to avoid the need to block, dodge, and parry entirely. Luckily, Assassin's Creed Nexus VR does stealth a lot better, something it shares in common with this year's open world entry on PlayStation, Xbox, and PC. Sneaking around is as simple as one button tap, where your patience is rewarded with the gleeful sensation of thrusting the hidden blade into an enemy's skull or back, or lobbing a throwing knife at a guard with unbelievable accuracy. Most satisfying though is the act of thrusting down onto a target from above, which Assassin's Creed Nexus VR always depicts using the appropriate amount of cinematic flair. It's also worth noting that Ubisoft has pulled out all of the stops by way of accessibility, including no less than 4 different comfort levels depending on how well your body typically holds up to VR games. I opted for immersive, which was the option without any comfort assist at all, where I was able to play 1 solid hour at a time before I started to get a hint of queasiness. That said, knowing that aspects like turn speed, tunnel vision, and vignetting can be adjusted is reassuring. Overall, more so than a lot of other VR titles, Ubisoft has gone to great lengths to ensure that all can live out the fantasy of being an assassin. Despite my qualms with combat, emphasis on present-day story and load screens, it's hard to imagine the Assassin's Creed experience being translated any better than the way Assassin's Creed Nexus VR does it, given the technology currently available. Catching up with these 3 familiar protagonists in amongst their own bite-sized stories, often taking place after when each's respective game narrative ended, was a pure joy. And though Connor initially felt like an odd candidate for this treatment, it being 10 years since we last saw him in Assassin's Creed 3 made exploring 18th century Boston oddly nostalgic. Assassin's Creed Nexus VR manages to delight more than it disappoints, succeeding in its goal to present this universe in a more immersive manner than ever before. We at Mirror Gaming give Assassin's Creed Nexus VR a 4 out of 5. So there you have it guys, in terms of my full review thoughts on Assassin's Creed Nexus VR. And for what it's worth, I played on a Meta Quest 2, but obviously this is also available to play and download on a Meta Quest 3. But if you enjoyed this video and you want to see more, be sure to leave it a like and subscribe to the Mirror Gaming YouTube channel to watch even more videos like this. Until then, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.